Jai Gurudev. Hope you did your homework last week. Today we'll move on with Kudala and Sikhi Dwaja's story. It's an interesting story. So let's start reading from page 301.
Vasistha continued. Devoid of self-knowledge, the king Sikhi Dwaja became blinded by delusion. He was sunk in grief, which nothing in the world could assuage. Soon he began to seek solitude like you, O Rama, doing just those royal duties which his ministers made him do. He gave plenty in charity. He performed various austerities. But there was no change in the delusion and in the sorrow. After considerable deliberation, one day Sikhi Dwaja said to the queen, "My dear, I have enjoyed sovereignty for a long time, and I have enjoyed all the royal pleasures. Neither pleasure nor pain, neither prosperity nor adversity is able to disturb the mind of the ascetic. Hence, I wish to go to the forest and become an ascetic, the beloved forest which resembles you in every respect." Here, he gives a romantic description of the forest, comparing it to the limbs of the queen. "Will delight my heart even as you do. So give me leave to go, for a good housewife does not obstruct her husband's wishes." Chudala replied, "Lord, that action alone shines as appropriate, which is done at the appropriate time. Flowers are appropriate to spring and fruits to the winter. Forest fire life is appropriate to old age, not for people of your age. At your age, the household life is appropriate. When we grow old, both of us shall leave this household life and go to the forest. Moreover, your subjects will grieve in your untimely departure from the kingdom." Sikhi Dwaja said, "My dear, do not place obstacles on my path. Know that I have already left for the forest. You are but a child, and it is not proper that you should go to the forest, too, and lead the hard ascetic life. Hence, remain here and rule the kingdom." Vasistha continued. That night, while the queen was still asleep, the king left the palace on the pretext of patrolling the city. He rode a whole day and reached a dense forest in the Mandara mountain. It was far, far from habitation, and there were signs that the place had been inhabited previously by holy Brahmana. There he built a cottage for himself and equipped it with whatever he considered necessary for the ascetic life, like a stick made of bamboo, eating utensil, water vessel, a tray for flowers, a kamandalu, a rosary, a garment to protect himself from the cold, a deerskin. There he commenced his ascetic life. The first part of the day he spent in meditation and japa. The second part of the day he spent in gathering flowers, and this was followed by a bath and worship of the deity. Thereafter, he took a frugal meal consisting of fruits and roots. The rest of the time he spent in japa, or the meditation, repetition of the mantra. Thus, he spent a long time in that cottage without ever thinking of his kingdom, etc.
So basically, here Kudala does try to tell Sikhi Dwaja that you don't really have to leave the kingdom to attain enlightenment or to attain the highest truth, but he does not listen. and he wants to lead an ascetic life. So he moves on, goes to the forest, and he starts leading an ascetic life, and we saw the description of how he spends his day. So we'll move on to page 302. As it is story, there's not much to explain. Let's read page 302.
Vasistha continued. Chudara awoke with a fright when she discovered that her husband had left the palace. She felt unhappy and decided that her place was by her husband's side. Quickly, she also got out of the palace through a small window and flew in the sky looking for her husband. She found him wandering in the forest. But before alighting near him, she considered future events through her psychic vision. She saw everything as it was destined to happen to the smallest detail. Bowing to the inevitable, she returned to the palace by the same aerial route she had taken. Chudara announced that the king had left the palace on an important mission. From then on, she conducted the affairs of the state. For 18 years, she dwelt in the palace and he in the forest without seeing each other. He had begun to show signs of old age. At that time, Chudara saw her husband's mind had ripened considerably and that it was time for her to help him attain enlightenment. Having thus determined, she left the palace at night and flew to where he was. She beheld the celestials and the perfected sages in the heavens. She flew through clouds, inhaling the heavenly perfume and looking forward with great eagerness to a reunion with her husband. She was excited and her mind was agitated. Becoming aware of this mental state, she said to herself, surely as long as there is life in the body, one's nature does not cease to be active. Even my mind is agitated so much. Or perhaps, O mind, you are seeking your own consort. On the other hand, my husband has surely forgotten all about his kingdom and me. After all these years of asceticism, in that case, it is futile on your part, O mind, to get excited at the prospect of meeting him once again. I shall restore equilibrium to the heart of my husband. It said to me that he will return to the kingdom where we shall dwell together happily for a long time. That delight which is had in a state of utter equilibrium is superior to all other happiness. Thinking of this, Chudara reached the Mandara mountain. Still remaining in the sky, she saw her husband as if it were another person. For the king, who had always been clothed in royal robes, now appeared as an emaciated ascetic. Chudara was depressed at this heartbreaking sight of her husband, clad in coarse garment, with matted locks, quiet and lonely, with his color darkened considerably, as if he had had a bath in a river of ink. For a moment she thought, alas, the fruit of foolishness, for only the foolish reach such a condition as the king has reached. Surely it is on account of his own delusion that he has thus secluded himself in this hermitage. Here and now I shall enable him to attain enlightenment. I shall approach him in a disguise.
Okay. So it's very interesting here how Kudala is already enlightened, and she got enlightened living a householder's life in the palace with all the name, fame, money, the title of a queen, etc. And how her husband does not understand that enlightenment can be attained in a householder's life. He goes into the forest and does all kinds of tapas and all kinds of things without understanding the truth about enlightenment, without understanding the meaning of enlightenment. So this is a very good example for us householders to realize that we really do not have to abandon our homes and go away into the mountains to attain the highest truth. The highest truth is attainable right where you are, and Kudala is the live example of the same. Now, Sikhidwaja had his own path. Understand this also. Because Sikhidwaja was so egoistic, was so full of himself, for him it was difficult probably to get enlightened while being the king and ruling the kingdom. For him, giving up all that was also probably an important step in his own spiritual journey. So, I never say that any step that you take on the spiritual path is a waste. Whatever your journey has been, it has been perfect for you. Wherever it has brought you, it is perfect. However long it has taken for you to get there, it is perfect. Yeah. So do not start comparing yourself with somebody else, or even thinking that, oh, I need to leave my home and go away and I will never attain enlightenment while being at home with my family, with my kids, or doing this job. It is all attainable, it is all possible. Kudala is an example, and now we will see how Kudala, who herself thought that this was enough time for the king to ripen. And what does it mean by ripening? 18 years. He must have done all kinds of tapas, he must have done all kinds of pranayams, he must have read all the scriptures possible, he must have done all the possible yoga asanas on the planet. He must have given up every desire, but he must have come to some point of realization that all these rituals have still not given him or bestowed on him enlightenment. At least this understanding comes to you. This understanding comes means a major milestone has been attained. People take an entire lifetime to understand that the blessing of a guru, the blessing of a teacher, the blessing of some God is not going to get me enlightened. Just this one thing, one statement, people spend an entire lifetime running after gurus, an entire lifetime running after rituals, an entire lifetime running after scriptures, thinking this is what is going to get me enlightenment. At least Sikhidwaja in those 18 years must have come to the point where he understands not only the futility of this samsara, but also understands the futility of running on the spiritual path. If he has come to that point where he just stops, he's ready to stop, he's willingly ready to drop it all, he can attain enlightenment. Kudala is just waiting for that one moment of maturity in Sikhidwaja. And she now thinks that 18 years he's been away and this must be a good time. He must be ripe enough. So of course, because she has attained those psychic powers, those siddhis, she can reduce herself into an atomic size and then she can fly through the air and she can see him there. Yeah. There also she realizes that because she has the body, she has not left the body after enlightenment. She's still in the body after her enlightenment. So those many years, the mind still has the potentiality of getting agitated. And the mind did get agitated. The mind got all excited. I am going to meet my husband. Oh, this is going to happen. That is going to happen. I will say this. He will say that. This is agitation. Though you may consider as happy daydreaming or a pleasant feeling thinking about such things, it is really agitation of the mind. any emotion creates a turbulence in the mind, up and down, and so does passion. And she experiences that and honestly vocalizes that till one is still in the body, the mind can get agitated. So, this is another key point for you, that the mind can get agitated even in an enlightened one. But the truly enlightened one knows how to maintain his equanimity and just observe the agitation of mind and not react to it externally, at least. That is full enlightenment. And that is what she is really working towards after attaining her enlightenment, because she had not reached the full enlightenment still. So now we will see that Kudala reaches the mountains and sees her husband. And she sees that he has starved himself, he has become totally dark, and he probably thinks by doing intense tapas and torturing the body will get him there, and has probably realized the futility of it all. So we'll read ahead and see, has Sikhidwaja realized what Kudala is expecting of him? We'll read page 303 now.
Vasistha continues, afraid that Sikhidwaja might once again spurn her teaching, considering that she was an ignorant girl. Kudala transformed herself into a young Brahmana ascetic and descended right in front of her husband. Sikhidwaja saw the young ascetic and was delighted. The young ascetic was incomparably radiant, so that Sikhidwaja took him to be a celestial. He worshipped the ascetic appropriately. Kudala appreciatively accepted the worship and remarked, I have traveled around the world, but never have I been worshipped with such devotion. I admire your tranquility and your austerity. You have chosen to tread the razor's edge, inasmuch as you have abandoned your kingdom and resorted to the forest life. Sikhidwaja replied, surely you know everything, O son of the gods, but your very look, you're showering nectar on me. I have a lovely wife who is just now ruling my kingdom. You resemble her in some ways, and the flowers I have offered you in worship, may they be blessed. One's life attains its fruition by the worship of the guest who arrives unsolicited. The worship of such a guest is superior even to the worship of the gods. Pray, tell me who you are and to what I owe this blessing of your visit to me. The Brahmana, Kudala said, there is a holy sage in this universe known as Narada. Once he was engaged in meditation in a cave on the bank of the holy river Ganga. At the end of his meditation, he heard the sound of bracelets apparently belonging to some people engaged in water sports. Out of curiosity, he looked in that direction and saw a few of the foremost celestial nymphs sporting in water, naked. They were indescribably beautiful. His heart experienced pleasure and his mind momentarily lost its equilibrium, overcome by lust. Sikhidwaja asked, Holy One, though he was a sage of great learning and a liberated one at that, though he was free from desire and from attachment, and though his consciousness was as limitless as the sky, how was it that he was overcome by lust? The Brahmana, Kudala said, O royal sage, all beings in the three worlds, including the gods in heaven, have a body that is subject to the dual forces. Whether one is ignorant or one is wise. As long as one is embodied, the body is subject to happiness and unhappiness, pleasure and pain. By enjoying satisfying objects, one experiences pleasure, and by deprivation, hunger, etc., one experiences pain. Such is nature.
This is very interesting. Most of us, we think that enlightenment bestows on you such powers that you will never be overcome by lust, or you would never feel attracted towards another physical body. This is a wrong understanding. Even if you are enlightened, you are subject to the dual forces. So what are the dual forces we talk about? In the happiness program, we say opposite values are complementary. So that everything in this creation is made in pairs, in twos. Yeah, good, bad, right, wrong, happy, sad, pain, pleasure. Everything is in couples, in pairs, and one is subject to the nature of this duality. Whether one is enlightened or not, he is surrounded by that duality. He is within that duality. Even though enlightenment means going beyond this duality and achieving the Advaita, that happens only at the full enlightenment stage. So there are levels to enlightenment, or stages to the final enlightenment. Till you are in these 6 stages, you have not become one with Advaita, not become one with the pool of consciousness. So at these 6 stages, you will have to experience the duality. Now, it depends on how centered you are, how equanimous you are, that whether you give into ragas and dveshas or not. Yeah? The higher you are on this ladder of enlightenment, the less likely you are to give into ragas and dveshas. When you are at full enlightenment, you do not even come back into body. You have become one with the pool of consciousness. So when there is no coming back, there is obviously no experience of the duality at all. That happens only at the complete enlightenment, full enlightenment. Buddha called it Samyak Sambodhi. Samyak Sambodhi is complete enlightenment. Enlightenment in its entirety. And therefore Buddha said that if you have to really work towards enlightenment, it has to be Samyak Sambuddhi. Work towards the highest. Otherwise, do not even work towards it. Buddha said there are levels to enlightenment. On the lower 6 levels, you will experience raga and dvesha. So even if you have experienced the highest states of samadhi, where you can see light within in your meditation, or hear celestial music, and hear your own heartbeat, and hear the sound of the creation, hear Om in your meditation, it still does not mean anything, because you have still not purified yourself completely of ragas and dveshas, and have not achieved the highest enlightenment, which is Samyak Sambodhi. So therefore, he says, aim for the highest, aim for Samyak Sambodhi. Do not settle for anything less than the highest. Yeah. So if you are very interested, you must follow the Buddha's path. You must aim for the highest. Anything less than that is not worth it. And why not? Because there is this potentiality to slip down again and give into ragas and dveshas and lose all that you have achieved. So on this page, Kudala disguises herself as a Brahmana and goes and meets her own husband. and starts to narrate a story about how Narada got overcome by lust. And Sikhidwaja asks the question, how can you get overcome by lust even at that stage? And she explains that you are still subject to the dual forces unless and until you overcome that dual force of raga and dvesha, you will not attain full enlightenment. So let's read ahead and see what more does Kudala add to the story.
The Brahmana Chudala continued. If the self, which is the reality and which is pure, is forgotten even for a moment, the object of experience attains expansion. If there is unbroken awareness, this does not happen. Even as darkness and light have come to be firmly associated with night and day, the experience of pleasure and pain has confirmed the existence of the body in the case of the ignorant. In the wise, however, if such an experience is reflected in consciousness, it does not produce an impression. As in case of a crystal, the wise man is influenced only by the object when it is actually and physically present nearby. But the ignorant person is so heavily influenced that he broods on the object even in its absence. Such are their characteristics. Thinned out vulnerability is liberation, whereas dense coloring of the mind is bondage. In response to Sikhidwaja's question, how do pleasure and pain arise even in the absence of the concerned object? The Brahmana has said, the cause is the impression received by the heart through the body, the eyes, etc. Later, this expands by itself. When the heart is agitated, the memory agitates the jiva in its kundalini abode. The nadi, which branch out throughout the body, are affected. Pleasure experiences and pain experiences affect the nadi differently. The nadi expand and blossom, as it were, in pleasure, not in pain. When the jiva does not thus enter into the agitated nadi, it is liberated. Bondage is none other than subjection of the jiva to pleasure and pain. When such subjection does not exist, there is liberation. The jiva gets agitated at the very sight of pleasure and pain. However, if through self-knowledge it realizes that pain and pleasure do not exist in truth, then it regains its equilibrium. Or, if it realizes that these do not exist in itself, nor does it, the jiva, exist in them, it realizes total freedom. If it realizes that all this is nothing but the one infinite consciousness, then again it attains equilibrium. Like a lamp without fuel, it does not get agitated again, for the jiva itself is then realized as a non-entity, and it is reabsorbed in the consciousness of which it is but the first thought emanation. Asked by Sikhidwaja to elaborate on how the pleasure experience leads to the loss of energy, the Brahmana has said, as I said, the jiva agitates the life force. The movement of the life force extracts the vital energy from the entire body. This energy then descends as the seminal energy which is discharged naturally. Asked, what is nature? The Brahmana said, originally, Brahman alone existed as Brahman. In it, innumerable substances appeared like ripples on the surface of the ocean. This is known as nature. It is not causally related to Brahman, but it happened like a coconut accidentally falling when a crow happened to alight on it. In that nature are found diverse creatures endowed with diverse characteristics.
This is a very interesting page. Let's look at it in detail. If the self, which is the reality and which is pure, is forgotten even for a moment, the object of experience attains expansion. Highlight this. This is very, very important. I'll explain this to you simply. The object attains expansion means what? Whatever I focus my energy on, that gains importance. For example, when I was a little child, I focused my energy on little toys and dolls and trucks and stuff like that. That gained expansion, means that was real. If you broke my Barbie doll's arm, I would cry for hours. That means what? For me, that Barbie doll, that entire playhouse was reality, was truth, was what life is all about. So it gained expansion. Do you understand this? You grow up a little bit more, then boys or girls become the focus, and that attains expansion in your mind. Relationships are more important, love is more important, lust becomes more important at that age. Whatever I focus on, that attains expansion. Slowly, you all started moving into spirituality, recognizing the futility of the samsara. Now that gained expansion. So are you understanding the meaning of some object attaining expansion? If the self, which is the reality and which is pure, is forgotten, even for a moment, the object of experience attains expansion. Because you have forgotten that you are the self and you have gotten lost in the samsara. So that's why the samsara gains expansion. If there is unbroken awareness, this does not happen. So if you're completely aware, moment to moment to moment, whether childhood or adolescence or adulthood or old age, throughout your life, moment to moment aware, then the object does not gain expansion. What gains expansion? That I am that Brahman consciousness and I am centered. Yes, I am Jagrat, I am aware all the time. Even as darkness and light have come to be firmly associated with day and night, the experience of pleasure and pain has confirmed the existence of the body in the case of the ignorant. Very beautifully said. So here he says, just like night is equal to darkness, day is equal to light, like that only pleasure and pain is equal to coming into body, existence of this body. In the wise, however, even if such an experience is reflected in consciousness, it does not produce an impression. As in the case of a crystal, the wise man is influenced only by the object when it is actually and physically present nearby. But the ignorant person is so heavily influenced that he broods on the object even in its absence. Such are their characteristics: thinned out vulnerabilities, liberation, whereas dense coloring of the mind is bondage. So what is he saying here? That the ignorant person, because he is in this body, he himself has come into this body out of his own bondage. When he is in the body, he is ignorant. An ignorant one holds on to the object, broods for it in the physical presence of the object. But even when the object is not in the physical proximity, just the thought of that object gives rise to agitation, gives rise to brooding, yeah? Or gives rise to any sort of raga and dvesha. This is the nature of ignorance, thinned out vulnerability. Yeah? This is the nature of ignorance. Thinned out vulnerability is liberation. Dense coloring of the mind is bondage. Again, highlight this last line, very important. I am so dense, so much. I want this, I don't want this, I like this, I don't like this should be this way, this should not be this way, life should turn out like this, life should not turn out like this, blah, blah, blah. All these things in the mind, right, wrong, good, bad, all ragas and dveshas is equal to bondage. It is dense mind, yes, and thinned out. All this, when it is thinned out, with meditation, with jnana, with self-knowledge that arises from within during meditation. That jnana makes this vulnerability thinned out. This dense bondage becomes thinner and thinner and thinner. And that thinned out vulnerability is liberation. Very clear? In response to Sikhidwaja's question, how do pleasure and pain arise even in the absence of the concerned object? The Brahmana said, the cause is what? The impression received by the heart through the body, the eyes, etc. Yeah? So, why do I still think about that dvesha even if that object of that dvesha is not in my presence? It is because it has left an impression in my consciousness. This impression in my consciousness keeps kicking me at the unconscious level of the mind, and I have developed certain characteristics, certain traits of my nature have become like that because of that particular impression that is embedded in my unconscious mind. Why did it even start, that impression? Because I gave a leeway to that dvesha, or in case of a raga, I gave leeway to that raga. Both raga and dvesha leave impressions in my unconscious mind. Yeah? And my job is to overcome that impression. That impression is the reason why pleasure and pain arise even in the absence of the object. Later, this expands by itself. When the heart is agitated, the memory agitates the jiva in its kundalini abode. The nadi which branch out throughout the body are affected. Pleasure experiences and pain experiences affect the nadi differently. The nadi expand and blossom, as it were, in pleasure, not in pain. Yeah. So, nadi expand in pleasure, not in pain. In pain, there will be contraction. In pleasure, there is expansion. So, every emotion that I give leeway to, example, if there is a particular thing I like, I develop raga towards it. Oh, I like this, this should always be like this. And that affects my kundalini. And the moment kundalini vibrates, it affects all the nadis. And because it is pleasure, the nadis expand. On the other hand, if there is something I have dvesha towards, that I do not like, I increase that dvesha more by my thoughts, by my action, by continuously hating it in the mind. And that again agitates my kundalini, and that spreads through all the nadis in the body. And because it is dvesha, it sends the sensation of pain, and that pain then contracts the nadis. So do you really see there is a connection here with what the Buddha discovered? Buddha said every external object kicks an inner raga, dvesha, vedana or sensation within, and I react to that sensation. If it is a pleasurable sensation, I want more. It is an unpleasant sensation, I don't want it. So he said the only way to get out of this cycle is to cut it at Vedana, to recognize that sensation and not react to it. Yeah? When the jiva does not thus enter into the agitated state, it is liberated. When you learn the art of being equanimous, not outside, equanimous inside. When you learn the skill of non-reaction, not outside in speech and action, but non-reaction inside. No reaction in the mind, at the thought level or at the emotion level. Then only you are attaining that state of not having the agitated nadi, and then only you are liberated. Bondage is none other than subjection of the jiva to pleasure and pain. When such subjection does not exist, there is liberation. Yeah, so you cannot say that the objects should be abandoned. How many objects will you abandon? Yeah, you will have to get rid of the entire world. But that's not possible. The world exists. All the objects exist. Therefore, Buddha gave the solution that this inner reaction that I have to these sensations, these nadis expanding and contracting, yeah, I react to the expansion and contraction of the nadi. At the first expansion or contraction, recognize there is Vedana and just observe it. Be a Sakshi. Do not react. When you thus learn the skill of non-reaction, you attain equanimity. And what will help you not to react? Just this recognition, oh, this is impermanent. This is changing. This is changing. It is continuously changing. The jiva gets agitated at the very sight of pleasure and pain. However, if through self-knowledge it realizes that pain and pleasure do not exist in truth, then it regains its equilibrium. Very clear? You recognize this nadi expansion or contraction is just Vedana, and it is not true, it is changing. Yeah, what is the meaning of not true? That which is constantly changing, that which is impermanent is untruth. Yeah, only that can be true and real, that which is permanent. People are changing, situations are changing, things are changing, this body is changing, emotions are changing, mind is changing, that mind is changing, everything is in a flux, everything is changing, everything is unreal, it is impermanent, it is not true. When you recognize this, you can regain your equilibrium. Or if it realizes that these do not exist in itself, nor does it, the jiva, exist in them, it realizes total freedom. This is the other way out. You realize that these do not exist in itself. This agitation that has come into my mind, that he said this to me, this does not really exist right now in the present moment. In the past, he must have said it, and his mind has also changed, so that also does not exist. His body has changed, so it is not the same person. My body has changed, I am not the same person. My mind has changed. Nothing is the same. Nothing is permanent. It is impermanent. It is changing. It is changing. It is not real. When you start recognizing this truth, you can regain your equilibrium. Yeah? If it realizes that all this is nothing but the one infinite consciousness, then again it attains equilibrium. Like a lamp without fuel, it does not get agitated again, for the jiva itself is then realized as a non-entity, and it is reabsorbed in the consciousness of which it is but the first thought emanation. Very important. The moment I start recognizing everything is changing, oh, everything is just a different kind of manifestation of the same consciousness. A tree is the same consciousness, a fan, a light bulb, a computer, a table, a human being, an insect, a cockroach, an ant, a pigeon, a fish, a dolphin, an elephant, a lion. Oh, everything is just the manifestation of the same consciousness in different forms. What am I taking so seriously? It is not even true. It is all unreal. It does not exist. When this understanding gets established, I also get established in this understanding, oh, I am the same consciousness. And this body is created out of that first thought. And what was that? The thought of I. That first thought emanation is what has led to all this. And I go back and I get reabsorbed in that consciousness. Asked by Sikhidwaja to elaborate on how the pleasure experience leads to the loss of energy, the Brahmana said, the jiva agitates the life force or the kundalini. The movement of the life force extracts the vital energy from the entire body through the nadis, either through expansion or contraction. This energy then descends, it goes down because it's losing the energy, and it goes and becomes the seminal energy which is discharged naturally. That's how you lose your equilibrium. Asked what is nature, the Brahmana said, originally Brahman alone existed as Brahman. In it, innumerable substances appeared like ripples on the surface of the ocean. This is known as nature. It is not causally related to Brahman, but it happened like a coconut accidentally falling when a crow happened to alight on it. In that nature are found diverse creatures endowed with diverse characteristics. We have studied this already, how the consciousness, which is just one pool, one entire ocean, just ripples appear on top of it, just by its own nature. So there is no real cause, but yet there is this diversity. There are different people, things, animals, trees, plants, objects, living and non-living, all throughout this creation, and each of them have their own diverse characteristics. Very interesting pages, right? Yeah. Before we go ahead next week, you look at yourself. Do you think enlightenment can be attained the way Sikhidwaja thinks? By doing extreme penance, extreme tapas, torturing your body? Do you think that can get you enlightenment? Do you think the scriptures can get you enlightenment? Do you think the guru or a teacher can get you enlightenment? Check. It's time to do some self-contemplation. Homework number 2. Check within yourself whether you have recognized the diversity of this consciousness, how everything came out of the pool of consciousness because of that I, And how just by recognizing that I'm part of the consciousness, I can attain that peace. Have you recognized that peace, at least in some meditation, maybe in a long course? Check. And homework number 3. Difficult situations come in all our lives. Have you learned the skill of not reacting to that Vedana, the sensation that is created because of an external or object? Or do you start reacting? And do you even realize that you're just reacting to that sensation of the nadis expanding and contracting? Check. Last part of that, check whether you are still blaming the objects of the world for the sensations that are created inside. I am truly and completely responsible for my own sensations, for my own expansion and contraction of the nadis. When I recognize that, I drop reaction. When I drop reaction, I will see slowly the nadis do not even expand or contract. Why? Because my kundalini does not get agitated by contact with the external object. But this will take some time for you to reach. At least start by recognizing, oh, I reacted to that sensation I experienced within me, that sensation of like or dislike. I did not really react to the external object. Start with this. Work on yourself sincerely this week on self-contemplation and on recognizing exactly what do I react to and what is the cause of my dukkha. And I will see you next week. Until then, keep doing some self-contemplation. Jai Gurudev.